Your time has expired. Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. What we've heard from the other side in this debate is a clear reflection of the fact that they are completely unengaged with the real problems we face as a nation. The real problems we face is how are we going to continue to pay for stuff? How are we going to continue to pay for stuff? We all want stuff in our lives. We all want more in our lives, but we've got to pay for it somehow. We've got to pay for it. And if we continue on the path we are on, the report that came out last week, one of the most important reports for some time, the Intergenerational Report, showed that if we don't do anything, that in 40 years' time the pension is going to cost us $165 billion a year, in today's dollars. $165 billion a year in today's dollars. And if you want to check that, Senator Conroy, go to page 69 of the report. It's exactly there. So how are you going to fix that, Senator Conroy? Senator Conroy is going to fix it by scoring goals.
Senator Canavan,
He's going to fix it by going to make lots of money for us in the English Premier League, and he can pay for all of our pensions. But $165 billion, that's more than a third of our current budget. This is in today's dollars, no inflation there. That's more than a third of our current budget and our current spending in this place. You know, the average Australian pays about 30% of their income in tax. They pay around $20,000 to $25,000 a year, the average Australian, in tax. How are they going to pay for all that? That means that at the moment, that means that we're thinking in the future that a third of that's going to have to go to pensions. Before we fund defence, before we fund hospitals, before we fund the PBS, before we fund Medicare. We have got to do something about that. If we want to continue to provide an overall safety net for our country, and I certainly want to do that. If we want to continue to help people who do it tough, we have to make decisions now, or we're going to end up with a situation where our kids and grandkids can't fund that amount, and more radical surgery would have to be taken then. And I don't want to do that. I want to act now because we're in a position to act without panicking right now. We're in a position to do something about this issue before we get forced to do something about this issue, when we can no longer borrow money from overseas at the same low interest rates we can right now, when we are already in massive amounts of debt, and we continue to have to go back to foreign markets, to foreign banks, to foreign governments and ask them to roll our bills. And if we can't do that, then we completely lost control. And instead of us here in this chamber being able to sit down and debate these matters reasonably, and with some flexibility, we'll be pushed into a situation where we'll be forced to make change. And it'll be taken out of our parliament's hands, and it'll be in the hands of those that would seek to find, or we would seek finance from. And I noted the minister's answer in question time today. I don't know if the other side did, but he did say that we are all ears. We are happy to have a discussion as a government about what alternatives might be in place here to deal with this issue, because it's seriously an issue. But there are no alternatives right now from the side of this chamber who purport to be an alternative government. And if you purport to be an alternative government, you should put up alternative proposals to deal with the issues that face our nation, to deal with the major issues that face our nation. And I noted that the minister was asked a question by the Labor Party that are we still committed? Are we still committed to the changes announced in last year's budget? And he said yes, they're still on the table. We are still committed to making sure we put a bunch of spending programs of the Australian governments on a sustainable path. We are still committed to hearing other proposals to make that put in place. But I just wonder what the Labor Party are still committed to, because their option to deal with this issue is to put up taxes instead. They are still committed to a carbon tax. We haven't heard what they're going to do about a mining tax, but presumably they're still committed to that. They are still committed to policies like shutting down the live cattle trade, which we also heard in question time. They are still committed to making sure that Australians in this country pay more taxes and not fund our future through making reasonable savings and tough decisions on our budget. Because, and the Greens want to put up taxes too. I shouldn't leave you out of this, Senator Whish-Wilson, as well, because I don't believe that more taxes are the solution to this country. I don't believe that our future should be paying more taxes. I believe taking off taxes is the right way to go about this thing. I believe that getting rid of the carbon tax was a multi-hundred-dollar boon for pensioners in this nation. We did not take the increased pensions away from them by doing that, but we did take the increased costs. And those costs are around $500 a year for the average household. They went off our pensioners in this country as a result of that decision. They maintain the extra pensions, and pensioners are much better off now than they were at the election 18